The last thing we do in our treatment of rotations is something called angular momentum, which might remind you of momentum we've already talked about, which is now called linear momentum. In the absence of friction, a particle moving a given velocity continues so indefinitely. One way that we've interpreted this is to say that its momentum is conserved. In the absence of friction, an object spinning at a given angular velocity will continue to do so indefinitely. It makes sense to wonder if there's something analogous to momentum that's being conserved. And there is. It's something we call angular momentum. It's usually symbolized by capital L. Using our other analogies, we'd expect that we could find L if we started from P equals mv and replace m with I and v with omega, and that works. P equals mv becomes L equals I omega. The SI units for L are kilogram meter squared per second. And just like for linear momentum, there's no pithy short name for it like newtons or joules. Again, analogously, we can take the formula for impulse, that is J equals F delta t, and turn it into an expression for the angular impulse, that is iota equals tau times delta t. This is iota, it's like an I without a little dot. Don't worry about that much because we don't tend to use iota, we tend to use it to leapfrog to the next bit. Continue on gives us the most important relation, that delta L is tau delta t, or that tau is delta L over delta t. That is, the torque is the rate of change of the angular momentum. Torque changes angular momentum exactly the same way that force changes linear momentum. And if the net torque on a system is 0, then the angular momentum is conserved. And that's important to understand. And you might wonder, is this just another thing we've thrown in? And it's a little bit more than that. Conservation of angular momentum is important because the net external torque on a system can be 0 even when the net external force is not. In other words, it's actually easier to have a situation where torque is conserved, where angular momentum is conserved, than to have one where linear momentum is conserved. This is because a lot of forces are so-called central forces. They act at or have a line of action that passes through the center of a system and therefore exert no net torque on it. All right, here's an illustration of the principle. What will happen to the person's speed once the bean bags are dropped?
Alright, here I am sitting on a stool which is free to rotate, and I'm holding two heavy bean bags. In this experiment, I'm going to start myself rotating, and then I'm going to drop the bean bags at my side. The question is, what will happen to my speed? Will I spin faster? Will I slow down? Or will I spin at the same speed?
So give yourself a thought for that. Here's what happens.
All right, let's find out. So, as you can see, my speed did not change. This is because even though I lost some mass when I dropped the bags onto the tabletop, they carried away some of the angular momentum that I originally had. Therefore, even though I'm lighter, after I dropped the bean bags, my rotational speed remained the same.
So we see that it was same speed. All right, what if instead the person had brought the beanbags towards his center? Would he then end up spinning faster or spinning slower, or would his rotation not change? Take a second or two to make sure you know what you think. And let's see. You can see that the person spun faster as the masses were closer in. Let's hear why.
What I was demonstrating was the law of conservation of angular momentum. Now, that law says that the angular momentum of a system remains constant unless the system is acted upon by net external torque. Now, angular momentum is the product of an object's rotational inertia and its angular velocity. What I was doing by moving these masses in and out was changing the rotational inertia of my body. With the masses out, a fair amount of mass was distributed far from the axis of rotation, which was the vertical line passing through the center of my body and right through the stool. When I brought the masses in, I decreased the rotational inertia. Now, the angular momentum is the product of the rotational inertia and the angular velocity, and that remains constant as long as we don't have a net external torque. So at the beginning, I had a large rotational inertia and a relatively small angular velocity. When I pulled my arms in, my rotational inertia went way down and my angular velocity went way up in order to keep the product of the two a constant. Now let's look at this again with me holding two masses in each hand. This is going to give me a greater change in rotational inertia.
You can see it's considerably faster. Later on we'll talk about exactly how much.
There you can see that the changes in my angular velocity were greater because of the greater change in rotational inertia.
The person began with some moment of inertia I0 and angular speed omega 0. After bringing his arms in, he has a moment of inertia IF and angular speed omega f. Crucially, the force he exerts to bring his arms in is internal and cannot change the angular momentum of the system. It's not an external torque, it's internal to the system. So we have that the angular momentum at the start equals the angular momentum at the end. I naught omega naught equals IF omega f. We can solve this for omega f, which would be I naught omega naught over IF. And I'm just going to group that differently by saying that it's the fraction initial rotational inertia over final rotational inertia times omega. So since IF is less than I0, then omega f must be more than omega 0. He spins faster as his arms come in. This general effect that things spin faster as they get more compact shows up all over the place. It's how figure skaters do amazing spins, how NASA controls their orientation in the Space Telescope, and how stars and planets pick up their actual daily spin. We can see it in the ice skating in the following way. This is sort of just summed up. As she brings in her arms, you'll see that she gets much faster. And we can see this as explained in the following. These are the different types of spin that a skater has. Where does it come from? Well, she generates her angular momentum at the start by spinning around a curve. So she's got some v, which is some effect of omega, which gives her some angular momentum. This is an alternate form, which is that L is also the linear momentum times R, or R times mv. And then we have in the spin, which is maybe more impressive, we have a change in the concentration of her mass and therefore a change in her rotational inertia. Here we have a relatively high rotational inertia because that leg is far out. As she brings the legs in, she has much decreased that R in the mr square, so it becomes much smaller. And then when she brings in tight, as she will do here, she has eliminated almost all the radius, so the rotational inertia is very, very small, so the angular speed must be much higher. We can also use this to explain how cats land on their feet, and I'm going to mostly push this off to this video by Smarter Every Day, which does a really good job of it. The basic summary of it, though, is that the cat is able to change its rotation around two different axes, and so can spin its front of its body quickly, and then by putting its legs out in the back, and then by conserving angular momentum, if it puts its back legs out, then the front will have to spin in counterpoint, and by arranging where legs are, it can change how fast they go. The whole thing is kind of an interesting thing, and I strongly encourage you to check out this link and take a look at it. It's kind of amusing and definitely maybe non-obvious. Here we can see how this works to stabilize things in space by using this gyroscopic effect, the fact that angular momentum won't change along an axis unless there's an external torque, and so things will tend to be stable. By using some spinning compact disc Walkmans to generate high angular velocities and therefore high angular momentum. We'll just skip through the video a bit, and it is linked online if you want to watch it in full.
If you just give it a little push, it just sits there and tumbles end over end. It's not a very stable platform. Now we're going to turn it on and watch what happens. And it's got a CD in there, and it's going to spin up. So while it's spinning up, it starts to rotate the opposite direction. Then once it reaches steady state motion, it just sits there. And now, look, when you push on it, it's spin stabilized from a gyroscope inside out of the compact disc.
Now it does wobble a bit. You'll notice that. It's only partially spin stabilized, in part because there's only one axis of rotation so far. Also, it's not clear why they left the headphones attached. That seems to be just silly and maybe potentially dangerous. Just to skip forward a bit, the astronaut eventually tapes 3 of these things together. And let's get to that spot. There's 2 of them. Now there's 3 of them, and they'll have much more stable.
And again, with all of them turned off, we'll see that it just tumbles end over end.
All right, so nothing special going on, so it just spins. But now he's going to turn on all 3 of them. Notice the headphones are now gone because they were in the way.
Now we have all 3 of them turned on. And it makes for a more stable platform. It's still not quite as stable as I would like. However, I'm not complaining because it's just from a spin and CD. It still has some of these little oscillations, as you can see as you're pushing on it off axis from the CG of the unit.
And those locate primarily because of imperfections in the spin of the particular hard drives, of the CD drives.